Welcome to the Port City Plate Podcast, presented by Bienville Bites Food Tour. The Port City Plate Podcast is serving up the food, history, and people of Mobile, Alabama for people who love the Port City. I'm your host, Chris Andrews, and I'm super excited to welcome David Gibson on the show today. David is the owner and the founder of Judge Roy Bean Spirits, and that's Alabama's newest bourbon. And David has a long history of branding and marketing, and now he's out telling the story of telling the nation really about Judge Roy Bean that's made right here locally, right here in Baldwin County. And Judge Roy Bean is a play on a former bar that was located in Daphne for many years, but David has kind of given that name new life here, and through great taste and pecan finished bourbon. I've gotten to know David over the last couple of months, and I'm super excited to share all about Judge Roy Bean and the goat. And David, thank you for coming to the Port City Plate Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I guess to start with, we need to talk about the name and Judge Roy Bean. You know, for a lot of people who may not be familiar, Judge Roy Bean was a bar in Daphne for many decades, long time, old bar, kind of a rundown hole in the wall bar, place that just locals went to and kind of enjoyed for many years. But talk about kind of how that name influences what you do now.
Well, it's kind of funny. I tell people that Judge Roy Bean was the Eastern Shore, kind of what Studio 54 was to New York. Everybody knew it. It was the place to go. Lots of great memories there for people. I mean, kids grew up there. People got married there. It was the place to go. And
those were the nice stories that you just mentioned.
Nice, yeah. There's some others I could not tell on your show. But the place, it stopped being around about 25 years ago, and as a result, the people who were there then are all older now, and the idea was to kind of create some of that nostalgia, a little nod to the storyteller, and a little bit of good memories for folks, and do it in a way that was fun, that was respectful, and kind of just let people look back on those times with good memories.
Yeah. And of course, the goat. There was a goat that was on site there.
The Billy was a real goat who was there. There was actually also chickens and the sorts of livestock. So we were able to kind of, with the label of the product, we used the goat kind of as the mascot, and we're able to get the domain name drinkwiththegoat.com, which kind of works on two levels these days. So that was kind of fun. We've kind of leaned into it. There's lots of fun goat stuff out there, so we've kind of leaned into that to make it kind of fun for people who may not understand the direct connection. Goats are still cool.
Right, I like it. So tell me your background. What's your background? Where'd you grow up and all that?
Sure, I'm originally from Marietta, Georgia, and grew up there. Moved to Birmingham, Alabama back in mid-'90s, and was there for about 20 years. I started a marketing company called Zeke, and we built websites. We built lots of websites, and had that company for about 18 years. Had a chance to sell it, kind of a chance to step off the elevator where I was at the top floor. So I took advantage of that opportunity and stayed about a year in Birmingham, and then we moved the family down to Fairhope in the middle of a pandemic, which was had its own set of challenges. And at the time, I wanted to get as far away from computers as I could. I had spent 20 years building websites and doing all those things and apps, and I thought, how far away from computers can I get? And I landed on liquor.
You nailed it.
Yeah, so far so good. Until I realized I needed to have a website and a Facebook page. We're not going to have an app. I'm going to draw the line somewhere. It's going to be somewhere around the Judge Roy Bean bourbon app. We're not going to do that. But everything else was on the table, and I kind of tell people that this brand has been almost like a greatest hits album for me. I've been able to use a lot of the friends I made along the way, my t-shirt guy, my hat guy. In fact, the label logo was done by a guy who was a graphic designer for me at my other company, who is a sketch artist for Disney. I mean, he does Star Wars, Marvel, and Billy the Goat.
Nice.
So it's a lot of fun to have those resources that are able to help me create something. I'm able to use my experience in branding to create the pieces that go along with it. It's not just a bourbon. We've got cool merchandise. We've got a coffee. We've got soap. We've got all these things that kind of make it all more than just a bottle.
And you also work with some restaurant partners as well during that time, right? Build websites for some restaurant owners and
absolutely
kind of making those connections.
Absolutely.
Now.
So at Ziki, we probably built 200 or 300 restaurant websites. Some of the big ones were like Lulu's. We worked with Baumhauer on all of his projects. Pink Pony Pub. I did Highlands, and I got to really know that industry really well. So and I was a bartender in college. So again, it's kind of like a greatest hits. I get to use my knowledge from being a bartender, from working in the restaurant business, my experience on the coast down here, working with Lulu's and working with all the folks, Fishers. Over the years, I was able to kind of come up with a way to make this thing really appealing to a lot of people without having to make hopefully not make a lot of mistakes along the way.
Yeah. So why Baldwin County? Why Fairhope? We're not exactly known for bourbon production down here. So
well, it's interesting. We moved here because my wife has some family here. We wanted a place to raise our daughters. It was out of the big city, and Birmingham was getting a little crowded. So we came down here, made Fairhope a little bit more crowded, and just like the pace of life, and it's a great place to be and raise a family. And turns out it's a good place to start a bourbon company.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of competition. People like to have a good time. I think something like half the liquor licenses in the state of Alabama are held between Baldwin and Mobile counties. So it seems like a target-rich environment if you want to sell whiskey. And another thing, too, is in the future, if we do a distillery, this is such a great agriculture area. There's so much corn and sweet potatoes and produce that we could use to make spirits that, when you're making a barrel of bourbon, 53-gallon barrel will take about 400 to 600 pounds of corn. So you don't order that on Amazon. You need to have a local source to get those things. So over time, as we grow this brand, hopefully we'll be able to become a good customer for a lot of the agriculture down here.
Yeah. So kind of talk about, you kind of got into it a little bit, but kind of explain the bourbon making process can you dumb it down as the best you can?
Yes, I can try. So let's talk first about what is bourbon. All right. So whiskey is a grain spirit. Okay. You'll have rye as a whiskey. You have bourbon as a whiskey. Lots of things can be whiskeys. Bourbon has some more rules around it. Bourbon, and there's some, I'll keep it on the top end, but basically it's got to be 51% corn. That's the number one rule. If it's 50% corn, it's no longer bourbon. It could be whiskey, but not bourbon. Bourbon's 51% corn. Bourbon must be stored in a new, charred American white oak barrel that's a first use. In other words, you can't reuse your barrels and have it be bourbon. You could take a rum barrel and put corn spirits in it and sell it as whiskey, but it could not be bourbon. So new American white oak barrels that have been charred, 51% corn. It's got to go in the barrel at a certain proof, 120 proof, and come out no less than 80 proof. You can't water it down below 80. You also can't add any color or flavorings to dilute it. So it's a more pure spirit. It's usually more expensive because of the aging process. Whiskeys are a little bit easier to make. Bourbons take more time. You can't make old whiskey. So once you've got the spirit, you can do some things to kind of make it unique. One of the things that we've done is we use a finishing process. What we've done is we've taken pecan wood chips that are charred and toasted, a combination of those two, and we actually add those to the barrel. Because we're not adding a flavoring or coloring, we stay within being considered bourbon. We are a specialty spirit, but it allows us to be a straight bourbon whiskey. We let it sit with those flavorings in there for about 3 to 6 months until the moon is right and the stars have aligned and we decide it's bottling day, and then we will bottle a product from there.
Okay. How do you know when it's ready?
It really is about taste. Things move faster. If you think about in the summertime, wood expands, and that'll cause the bourbon to drop into the wood. In the wintertime, it constricts, causes it to push out. A lot of people don't realize that when bourbon goes into the barrel, it's actually white, called white dog, and it's a clear spirit. All the color from bourbon and whiskey bourbons for sure. Whiskeys could have something added to it, but bourbon comes from the charred pecan wood and the action of the barrel, where the bourbon's going into the wood and out of the wood, the expression. So the longer you let it sit, the more times it'll express through the wood, the deeper the flavor is going to be. A barrel of bourbon that's 2 years old costs vastly different than a barrel that's 6 years old, just because of the age and the value of that product.
Okay. How did you come up with the idea for adding the pecan wood?
Hurricane Sally.
Okay.
When I had the idea of doing bourbon, it'll be real upfront. I don't actually make the bourbon here. We make I use Kentucky and Indiana and Texas bourbon. I source my bourbon from really good distilleries who've done a great job. So I'll bring the barrels in already 2 to 3 or 4 years old. We take those and then we do our finishing process on them. I could use local bourbon if there was any available, but in Alabama, the nearest I can figure, there's about 300 barrels of bourbon being stored. And that's between all the distilleries that are out there. Now, there might be a bunch of stuff I don't know about that maybe not quite above the board bourbon that's being out there, but the stuff that I legally know about, it's about 300 barrels compared to Kentucky that has around 10 million barrels in the air aging. So these distilleries have been around for hundreds of years will sell their excess barrels. So I go out and find the ones I want to buy. I bring them in to a distillery in Opelika, Alabama, where we age it. And that's where we age it until it's time to sell. So it is a little bit of a process where you're looking at the how long it sat, how much pecan wood was in it. But after Sally had hit, I looked around and said, I got to do something different with the bourbon. I can't just resell somebody else's bourbon. I was working with the guys at Detling on the bourbon creation at that point, and he's basically said, I'll help you if you make it unique. I don't mind teaching you how to do this, but to just take somebody else's bourbon, stick it in a bottle, and sell it isn't of interest. And I said, okay, we'll figure out how to make it unique. And that's when Sally hit. And when Sally hit, I thought, we got all this pecan wood around here. There's my idea. So I work with Seth at Big Escambia and Detling Bourbon, and we tried variations of charred and toasted pecan wood in different environments to see, will it taste good? Is it bitter? Does it taste? How much char to put on the wood? If it's too much or too little? How much absorption would happen? So if you put too much pecan wood in there, all your bourbon gets sucked up into the pecan wood, which is
interesting,
not good, right? So you got to find that balance. And we finally found something that kind of worked. And he's like, okay, well, I think his words were, that's a lot better than I thought it would be. I took that as a win. So
right,
off we go. And I bought some barrels of bourbon, and we put pecan wood in, and we let it sit.
It makes you wonder why nobody else has done that before.
People have done some things with finishing, and had done with bourbon with pecan wood chips. I just use a whole lot more, I think, than most people are using. Sometimes it's just a little hint. I've kind of made it something that I really tie to this area. Now, I'm a little disclaimer: we do not use pecan wood that I found on the side of the road. It would be a lot cheaper if I did, but we use actually competition grade pecan wood barbecue chips because I know they've been kiln dried, so I know the control has been put on them. I know they're safe because I don't want to use pecan wood that had somebody's radiator fluid leak into the root system of the tree. So I'm gonna be real careful with the product we use in there. So we use competition grade barbecue pecan wood.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun, but I think just the amount that we're putting in there, what it does, it gives the bourbon a bit more smoky flavor. Other thing that's kind of interesting is that we do what's called small batch bourbon. So small batch basically means that we bring in a lot of barrels, not a lot, but a lot. So a lot of 8 or a lot of 12, or it could be 4, and we'll make all those in one production run. What it will do is gives me a little bit of tolerance to have each batch taste a bit different. If you like batch 2, get all you can because there will never be another batch 2.
Okay.
If you like batch 3, it's going to taste a little different than batch 2. Maybe it sat on the wood a little bit longer. Maybe we made it during the summer when the wood was more active. Maybe the barrel that were charred a little bit more intensely. So there'll be some subtle differences between batches 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
Interesting.
And we are also, we're doing what we call Jubilee releases, kind of a nod to the Bay. And those are things that are not normal releases. They just kind of show up on the shelves. For instance, right now we have a barrel strength we've dropped. It's 118 proof. It's super strong. 120 is the top for bourbon. We got it just shy underneath that. And that'll be on shelves, and we did 1 barrel of it. So single barrel release. When it's gone, it's gone. We've got plans to do a honey barrel. And I say we like it's much like a team. It's just me. Kind of old habits die hard, I guess. So we, the team of myself and me, decided we're going to do a few more of these Jubilee releases over the next few years to kind of make it fun, something that people can kind of hunt for, or to have something on their shelf that you won't ever be able to get again.
Right.
And that's kind of the neat thing about bourbon these days is there's so many special releases, and it is a unique experience. It's the idea of walking to a liquor store and buying the same bottle for the next 25 years is not exciting to anybody. But going into a store and seeing something you've never seen or a special version of something you like, Maker's Mark has done a huge job with finishing with different kinds of oak wood. So, they put different kind of staves, French oak staves and Madagascar staves and all these things. So they're doing the same kind of process. I'm just doing pecan wood.
Yeah. I love that. I love I appreciate you going kind of in depth on the process of that. What about, so talk about the journey. I mean, this went from an idea to the first bottle being sold. So kind of talk about that journey.
Sure.
Because I know that couldn't have been easy, right? I mean, we're talking about ABC Board of Alabama. And
well, interestingly, I'll give you a little bit of interesting history. Is there's not many distilleries here. In Alabama, there's about 13. There's been maybe 20 in the last 10 years. It's a relatively new industry. So that doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means there's not a lot of people who have all the answers. So one of the unique things about this business is that everybody helps each other. Everybody's friends. I spent yesterday with the guys from John Emerald and the guys from Sweet Home Spirits. Everybody is kind of the idea of one dream, one team, and it's designed that if we work to build the perception and the enjoyment and the artistry of bourbon, it helps everybody. Our competition is beer and marijuana. It's not Maker's Mark. When people walk in a liquor store, you can kind of see who's going where. And the people who look around like they're wanting to try something new, that's our customer. Somebody who walks in, they're going to get the same handle of Tito's they've gotten every weekend. That guy's not going to buy bourbon, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But the bourbon community all likes to work together. So when I started, I had reached out to Seth at Biggest Cambios, Detling, and I said, I had met him through building websites, and I said I wanted to do this, and he said, well, I'll help you, but got to be unique, got to do something different. And he kind of helped me get the recipe and the formula. Working with the ABC was surprisingly easy because they do want to help. Kind of a funny story about it is I had run this idea past the buyers at the state and said, I have this idea for bourbon. And I knew them because I had built websites for Bourbon Ham and some other things that they were involved with. And the guy said, well, that sounds pretty good. We could try that in all the stores south of I-10 and see how it does. And I said, great. So I go off and I work with Seth. I get my sample bottles. We got that done. I got my barrels ordered. I got them aging. And I thought, well, now I got to go get permission. So let's get all legal. Now I got everything kind of set up. And so I went and called them and said, okay, I've got my bourbon ready. What do I got to do to get approved? And they said, you were serious about that? I said, yeah. He said, how much did you make? I said, well, I made about 4 barrels. He said, Gibson, that's not a hobby. That's a real thing. I said, well, yeah, of course it is. So I took my sample bottles up to Montgomery. They sampled the product and said, all right, what's your plan to sell it? And I said, well, you see the name, right? And they said, never heard of it. I said, uh-oh. I said, you have to trust me on this one. And luckily, they took a line of flyer with me. Shout out to Bill Stitt from Billy's Bacon. He was actually a really big proponent of mine early on, and wrote a nice letter to them saying, "Hey, we want to have this in our place. We know Dave. We know this name. We know it's going to sell. And we can't wait to carry it." And I think that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
People like Baumhauer and Lulu's were all friends, and I could cite that I could talk to them. I can't make them buy bourbon from me, but at least I had a network, and they took a risk. And the kind of funny thing was we went on the shelves in October. I had made about 1,200 bottles of bourbon. I thought I was going to be good for a month or for 3 or 4 months. I was good for about 6 weeks.
Wow.
It went quick. Not only did it go quick on the Eastern Shore, I had dropped a few cases up to some stores in Birmingham because my history there, they were selling out there. So I woke up 2 weeks after having dropped my first bottle ever, and it's in 25 of the ABC stores.
That's incredible.
And then it started going to the package stores. And then it started going to restaurants. So it's been a fun journey. But it's still one of those things where you just got to get people to taste it. Get lips to glass, get them to enjoy it. There's some things we did with the bourbon that are kind of intentional, and I'll kind of run you through those. One of them is that we use a 21% rye mash bill. I use that mash bill because I personally like wheated bourbons. I like the Maker's Mark. I like those kind of products. But they won't taste as spirit-ish to somebody who is a bourbon drinker. So you put the rye in there, it gets a little bit of spice. So bourbon drinkers will kind of acclimate more to that kind of a product. We also we proofed it down to 90 proof. The reason we did that is if we go above 90, it's hard to make cocktails. You go into a restaurant or bar, the spirit overpowers what they can do to it. So I got one shot at one lane, on the package store shelf, and I got to choose it right. So I really worked to make sure I created something that bartenders could work with, that bourbon drinkers would like, and then the magic thing is that anybody who is not a bourbon drinker would also enjoy it. So the pecan wood gives the bourbon a nice kind of velvety feel. It makes it a little bit smooth, a little smoky, got a sweet back end from the toasted notes in the pecan wood. And what we end up with is something that, the whole brand is you'll be able to go sit by the bay and watch sunset with a bottle. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to make it taste better. It's easy drinking. The word people say a lot that I'd love to hear is smooth. I've watched people who don't like bourbon tell me it was okay, which I'll take that as a win. People who don't drink bourbon. In fact, my wife doesn't like bourbon, and I had to literally go with my experimental batches that I was making by which batch she made the least bad face with. I'm like, wow, you didn't scrunch up nearly as much on number 4. Let's see about number 5. So working with her and through my neighbors for a big help and kind of getting their flavor profile right, we landed on what we're producing today.
So there's a lot of tradition, I think, it feels like with bourbon, hardcore bourbon drinkers, right? I mean, they probably stick to one brand. They're probably pretty loyal, I would imagine. What are some of the things that you're doing to kind of convert those people to try your George Roy bean?
Well, really what it's about is think of a wheel, okay? It's probably like a restaurant business. People are going to have their favorites. And what you want to try to do is get yourself on the wheel. So somebody who is a hardcore Old Forester drinker may not be a great fit for what I'm doing. But at the same time, if they'll give a bottle a try, they might find something they really like it. It's also, one of those things where I think having the bottles down here that have the nostalgia that go along with it, I'm willing to bet you I got a bunch of bottles on shelves that have not been opened. And that's okay with me. I'd like people to enjoy it, but at the same time, if you just like having the bottles and being part of the history, that's awesome too. But I think that getting people to try it, the term that we use is lips to glass, and trying to get things like tastings and the events, bourbon events like Bourbon by the Bay and Bourbonham are great for people to try your product. It's not something where I think I can compete with a margarita. But at the same time, bourbon's really hot right now. People are open to trying it. A lot of great cocktails. When I was a bartender, we basically had, the only flavored things we had behind the bar was Galliano and Chambord. There was a Midori maybe somewhere. Now they've got all these cool things they can do. And the folks at Dragonfly are good friends of mine. They've done an amazing job with using freshly muddled mint and smoked this, and we marinated these cherries, and it's amazing what these bartenders can do to create such cool craft cocktails. That in my day it was a bourbon and Coke. I did have a guy come to my bar one time and ask me for a Jack and Do, and I said, well, even if I could do that, I don't know that I would do that. So it's amazing to see kind of how people have come forward. And that's something else too, like the Jubilee releases are probably not things bars would carry because A, they're going to be able to reorder, and 2, they're going to be designed to be something more you'd want to keep on your shelf for a long time, have little bits of it over time. So it's those are the kind of products that I think if people see them, I'd say get them while you can, because I cannot make another batch Jubilee release number 2. That's it.
So you mentioned batch 1, 2, and 3, and some of the other batches. Batch 1 was October of 22, right?
Correct. And
what batch are you currently selling now?
We just shipped batch 3 to the ABC warehouses. So Alabama is interesting. In Alabama, I have one customer. And that's the state of Alabama. I sell my bourbon to them, and then they sell it out to the world. So everything that we sell goes from Opelika with the distillery to Montgomery, and they distribute it from there. So they've just now gotten batch 3 in their warehouses, and they'll send it out to the world. Hopefully we've got some bottles, some Jubilee bottles, Jubilee batch number 2, landing in stores this week. So pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing some people post on Facebook that they've got those bottles.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, I'm excited about getting that batch 2 as well. So, but what were some cocktails maybe that some people could make at home? They go and they buy a batch of, or they buy a bottle of your bourbon. What are some cocktails they could make at home? It would be easy.
Well, the fun thing is there's really no right or wrong way to try bourbon, right? I like bourbon with a big rock, a big piece of ice, and sometimes just a splash of ginger ale or ginger beer on it. Like that to me is great. My bourbon lends itself to old fashions really well. Old fashions, the smokiness of the bourbon brings that out, so people really like that. One of the hot drinks that I see people making are New York sours. It's kind of like a regular whiskey sour, but they use an egg white in there and create a froth. And so that's kind of a fun, cool thing to drink. But at home, I think it's keeping it simple as you can. I mean, you can buy some great syrups. One of the ones I like is like a honey syrup. So you put some honey syrup in it, squeeze a lemon, rocks, and off you go. It's good refreshing. We're moving into summer, which means it's not really sit by the fire with a open glass of whiskey weather. So you're gonna have to do something to kind of chill it down, cool it off. What's really cool is even just keeping the whiskey in the freezer for a little bit, and then you're just chilled when you're drinking it. That's a nice way in the summertime to enjoy it, where it's not quite as hot. We do these whiskey tastings and bourbon tastings, and it's always a challenge because people are tasting your product under the worst possible conditions. It's in a plastic cup, and it's hot.
Right.
Like, and you're not really supposed to put it, like, you can't say, oh, here's some Jack Daniels and Mountain Dew. It's literally, here's the spirit on its own. And a lot of people just really don't want to drink it like that. And I certainly understand that it is an acquired taste. And, like with gin, I probably would not want to sit down and drink a glass of straight gin, but there are people who do. But with a bourbon, I think it's kind of fun to kind of experiment a little bit. I think the ginger ale or soda water brightens it up a little bit, gives a little bit of fizz. It's easy. But again, I kind of wanted this product to be something that you didn't have to do a whole lot to. In fact, I brought some if you'd like to have
absolutely. Yeah.
Got these poured and ready. So cheers.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
That's smooth.
Yeah, it is.
And you didn't make a face, so you must be a good bourbon drinker.
Oh yeah. I enjoy it. And like I said, I've got a bottle at my house, and I enjoy it too. And I've been telling all my friends about it as well. So
thank you.
Some of the guys that are we've been playing around with some old fashions and some bourbons and stuff. So I'm a little bit new to the bourbon scene, but no, it's absolutely, it's up there as my favorite. So
thank you. I think what's fun is when you can use local stuff. So trying to find a way to make a Satsuma syrup or a Satsuma's bitter would be a big interest to me. Anything with blackberries in it, they're local. I think that makes a huge difference. Local honey. Kind of spoiler alert. I've got a bee guy, and the bee guy is going to use one of my barrels to make a Judge Roy Bean bourbon barrel finished honey.
Okay.
So that'll be something
I like it.
He's going to do, and it's finding those partnerships and make it fun. Finding local people to kind of help tell the story and or make it part of theirs.
Absolutely, yeah. And when we've done that on our Taste of Fairhope tour,
yes.
I know one of our stops there at Dragonfly, we've been doing a cocktail, and we did a little julep a couple of weeks ago. Now we're doing what we call the Judge Roy Bean Jubilee.
Yes.
And it's a little sweeter. It's got some jam and some other ingredients in it, but it is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. They've got a bourbon soaked cherry in there, so it's good.
Yeah, it's a good one. Also on our Being Able Bites tour, if you take the tour in the month of June, we're having our BBBQ tour for the guys, and our first stop at Squid Ink is going to have a bourbon tasting of George Roy Bean.
Yes,
they've got a bourbon bottle on the shelf there at the bar. So. What are some other restaurants though that you can think of in this area, Mobile, Baldwin County, that have your product?
Dragonfly's got it for sure. Also, Ravenite Pizza's got it. Hope Farm has got it. I kind of have to keep an eye. We get data so delayed from the state. I don't really know who's bought it because they buy bourbon the same way that we do. They walk in the package store and they order ahead, but they buy it off the shelf and take it back to the restaurant. So. Sometimes I'll be surprised. I'll walk in someplace and go, wow, look at there. But I know Hope Farmer's got it, Ravenite, and of course Dragonfly's got some cocktails with it, which is great. And excited to kind of grow from there. I've got wanting to work with some folks on some summer bourbon drinks, like some bourbon smashes or maybe a bourbon float. So we'll see where I can get some people to take a flyer on this thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I know the place that I go to probably the most is Sarabama Liquor Store up in Saraland, and they've got it.
They do. Actually, he's a great folks that run that place and have been a a big fan, and we might have something special showing up there sometime in the near future.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, if there's a tasting in Saraland, I think we could probably recruit a few of my friends at least to show up to that one.
Great, do a remote broadcast.
Absolutely. But you mentioned hats and T-shirts and all kind of stuff like that. Where can you find that?
I've got a lot of great stuff on the website. I kind of do things in small runs, so we may do a yellow shirt this summer. We won't have it again until next summer. But on the website, we've got things, and also River Bend in Fairhope on the main drag at Fairhope has got merchandise in there as well. But I've got hats, T-shirts, some metal signs. I partnered with Fairhope soap and did a bourbon barrel, like a bourbon soap, which is kind of fun, and also did a bourbon pecan roasted coffee with the folks at Fairhope Roasting. So we've got some other kind of things to make it a little bit more fun. Great stuff for Father's Day coming up.
Yeah, very good.
But I just appreciate everybody, give it a try.
Yeah. And that Riverbend, you mentioned that downtown Fairhope. That's a really cool men's store. I know this is a food podcast, but that's a really cool men's store too. They got some good stuff in there.
A lot of great stuff.
I'm really amazed, I guess, kind of something you mentioned earlier, and I kind of want to get maybe expand your thoughts on it. You mentioned, working with other, people probably see y'all as competitors, John Emerald and Detling, and, out of Brewton, Escambia County. Kind of talk about that. Like, how is that? That's unheard of for them to help you get started, for them to bottle your bourbon, and just kind of expand on that a little bit.
It's really strange. They come out of computers and out of marketing where everybody's kind of
cutthroat, right?
Yeah. And everybody else is wrong and I'm right and that kind of stuff. So it's been a nice surprise. On one hand you think, well, they don't bottle it for free. I pay rent, I pay for their services, sure. But at the same time, like the guys at Clyde Mays are just fantastic, and it is a really refreshing. I can call any one of these guys and say, hey, I'm going to Ocean Springs, Mississippi today. Who should I talk to? And they'll tell me the top 3 stores to go see. They'll tell me the ones not to go see.
Yeah.
So it really is a case where if any one of us can get people trying more local stuff, get somebody acclimated to the idea that we can do cool stuff here, then we might win a customer for life. Whether it's for me or for anybody else, it's a win, right? The other thing it's I guess we all recognize here is everybody likes to show off what they do. With Fairhope, I have a big advantage in that we got a lot of tourists there. So when people come in from out of town, they want to try the local stuff.
Right.
So if we have a local product on the shelf, people are willing to try it. But the trick is it's got to be good. I don't think people should feel like they're having to take a step back or lower quality or expectation because it's a local product. And that's what I do know about these other guys that I work with is we want somebody comes in from Kentucky or Texas or California, and they see an Alabama product that they can see it. It's easily identifiable. It's affordable. I mean, it's a win for us as an industry or a localized industry if we can get people trying these things. I mean, it's kind of I don't know if it's a flex, but when somebody in Texas emails me across the website and says, I'm trying to buy your whiskey here and I can't, I'm like, come see us. Come to town.
Yeah.
I'll buy
can't
you one.
Ship it.
Yeah, can't ship it. So it's kind of fun to have those little advantages, and I think that's kind of the idea is that it's kind of a one dream, one team approach, and I certainly would not be able to do this at all if people were proprietary on their knowledge or not willing to share. And it works both ways. I mean, I have a lot more marketing experience and connections, and I am absolutely willing to help any of these guys with any of that I can.
Right.
Because I don't have a background in distilling. I don't have a family recipe that was passed down for generations. I know enough to know that I need to let the people who do that really well, and maybe let me focus on my strengths. And in the middle of that is a product we hope people love.
Right. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, I like that. What do you think is next for Judge Roy Bean? I mean, what do you think 5 years from now, 10 years? Where do you want to see the brand go?
Well, considering I never thought I'd sell north of I-10, I don't know. I am going to, with batch 4, we're taking a little left turn. Like literally, we're going to use some Texas bourbon instead of Kentucky bourbon.
Okay.
It's really good. It's a 5-year-old distillate, so it's going to be a little older than some stuff we've been using. It's tasty, 21% rye. And the hope is that by using a Texas distillate, I can actually get this into the Texas market. I think with a brand like Judge Roy Bean and a goat on the bottle and a kind of Wild West motif that I could sell a few bottles out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
and maybe they'll claim it for their own. I don't know, but
they will. That's how they do over in Texas,
exactly.
right?
But this is a hard game. I mean, you've got a lot of big national brands, and they have distributors. I'm an army of one. I knock on my own doors. I can't legally distribute it myself, but every restaurant who's carried is one that I've walked in and said hello to and shook somebody's hand, and they trusted me enough to buy a bottle and see what happens. A little harder to do that in the summer, but hey, we'll keep at it. So I would love if in the next 5 years that I've established this to a point where maybe I can do a distillery or a small tasting room in this area. There's not a distillery on the Eastern Shore. There's going to be one sooner or later. I'd like to be part of it. I'm going to do some more products. Kind of a spoiler alert. I'm going to do a rum. I've got to get them convinced in Montgomery to buy it. Yeah. So if you would all ask about Judge Roy Bean rum at the liquor stores, that would help me immensely. But what we're going to do is a bourbon barrel finished rum. So take our bourbon barrels that we've used, fill those full of white rum, let them sit for about 6 months, and we'll do a bourbon aged.
So you can use the bourbon barrels for rum.
I can. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So it's all about trying to use everything efficiently. Even the barrels, like I've got six barrels that I just picked up yesterday, turned into furniture. Yeah. And he's going to build me something that we're going to end up finding an auction somewhere, a charity auction, and putting a barrel stand or something there they can auction off. So about trying to leave no footprints, no waste in this business.
That's awesome. I feel like every episode we do, I always say this, where it's like we're on the very front end of for you especially. Where I think we're on the very your first batch was October 22. We're early into this thing. I think, if somebody listens to this 5-10 years from now, I think, it's going to be a huge brand, hopefully at that point.
Well, thank you.
And I feel like we say that every episode, though, where somebody's like, man, I think this brand is going to be really something 5-10 years, and I'm excited. I'm excited to watch your brand too grow.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your help. Y'all have been a huge, huge help for me, and I hope we're able to create a great experience for the tour guests who come in, because it is something they can't get at home.
That's right.
And that's kind of
it's all about local. That's exactly why we have partnered with you, is because how often can you have a cocktail with a local whiskey in it? So it's really unique. I can't let you get out of here before we move on to our next segment, which is called Meat and Three.
Meat and Three. All right.
Meat and Three. So we've gotten into the meat of the podcast. I've got 3 questions for you. Now, you're a Birmingham guy. Tell me what's some of your go-to restaurants up there in Birmingham?
Birmingham, I cannot not mention Pablo's. Pablo's, a Mexican restaurant. It used to be near my old office, and it was between my office and my house, so we called it Conference Room P. So I had a lot of conferences in Conference Room P at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That was a great one. We also really like Masaman. It's a great Thai food up there. On the nice end, I mean, golly, there's so many good ones these days. Over the years, we've done. I've really enjoyed Ocean and Hot and Hot. Those are kind of in the background right now.
Some of the staples.
But Highlands is still up there. Bottega's. There's some. Birmingham has had some great places. Soho Social is in kind of the new hip place. They actually carry my bourbon up there. So I'm a big fan of theirs. Let's see what else is a good one. Probably Vecchia Pizzeria is one of our family favorites. Kids love it, and they make animals out of the dough and all that good stuff. That's
cool. That's really cool. What about Eastern Shore or Mobile? Where do you and the family, where do y'all go for a nice meal?
We are regulars at Section Street.
Yeah.
Pizza. That's a family favorite. Love Dragonfly.
Right.
And Babe Ree's Cafe.
Yeah.
Even my little ones like Babe Ree's, so it's kind of fun. Little nicer dinners. We'll creep over to what's the Italian place at the bottom of the hill?
Gambino's.
Gambino's.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry, man, mind blinked on that. Gambino's is a great one. We like that one. And kind of on this side, Squid Ink's great.
Yeah,
it really is. And of course, Dolphins is another experience. It's one of those things that you do once or twice a year, and it's well worth the experience there. So.
For sure. Yep. All right. Last question for you, B. What would be David's final meal?
Good question. Golly, probably fajitas from Pablo's.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, just they do it right, and it's always fun.
Where is that?
In the Colonnade. It's not a big place, but our kids grew up eating there, and then just such a great family place, and margaritas are super good. So.
All right, last segment of the show is called Chris's Dishes, and this is where I talk about the best dish that I've had over the last week, and then I'll turn it over to you. You talk about maybe the best dish you've had, but the best dish that I've had last week is, it's funny, we mentioned dragonfly about 3 times, and that was my dish, was dragonfly. I had the crispy oyster blue cheese French toast.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had that?
Yes,
yes. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's a dish. There's 4 of them on it. It's a soft French loaf. I mean, the French loaf was really, really good, soft. But the oyster they had on it, it wasn't a hardcore fried oyster. It was very lightly fried and crispy. Like it says, they had a blue cheese on top, a little aioli on the top as well. But man, that is a fantastic dish to get.
It's funny. I was going to talk about barbecue, but I think I want to change my answer because here you talk about that. I had at Dragonfly this week. I had the I guess I don't know, kind of little tiny wings. Those things are amazing.
Okay, I hadn't had the wings.
I think they're little quail wings or something.
Okay.
They're little tiny chicken wings, but they've got a blue cheese and some radishes. They've like pickled and stuff, and
that was on top of the oyster toast also.
It's just perfect. I mean, and of course you feel like a giant in these tiny little wings, but they're delicious, and that's a great one.
Yeah, you can't go wrong anywhere, Dragonfly.
But we are walking into a barbecue weekend. I mean, this is the weekend. So I'm gonna do some bourbon peach ribs.
Okay.
So I'm kind of excited about that.
How are you gonna do those?
I've got a peach rub and a little bit of bourbon. We'll mix those together and let it kind of like a paste on the ribs, and we'll just smoke them for 6 hours. And it'll be add some honey at the halfway mark and some butter, and it'll end up being delicious.
That's fantastic.
I kind of like the idea of doing this bourbon peach thing for summer.
Yeah, man, that sounds good.
Come on.
Yeah, David, thanks so much for coming on the Porch City Plate podcast. Man,
Absolutely.
I've enjoyed it. Enjoyed getting to hear kind of some of the details of what goes into your bourbon, and like I said earlier, I'm very excited to see where it's going to go. So y'all get out to the package stores, ABC stores, restaurants, like I said, Squid Ink, Dragonfly, some of the good places around Mobile and Eastern Shore, and get the Judge Roy bean, and hopefully we'll do some kind of giveaway or something like that on the Facebook page. We might got some shirts and some hats we'll be giving away too. So
we know that.
Y'all stay posted for that, and we'll make that happen too. But yeah, thanks David for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening to the Porch City Plate podcast. Y'all can of course subscribe, continue to listen to all the episodes that we've got on the Porch City Plate podcast. Appreciate y'all voting for us in the Nappy Awards this year for Best Local Podcast. So it's pretty excited to be a finalist there, and just super excited about where the podcast is going. We've got some awesome guests coming up as well in the future. So until next time, we will catch y'all on the next episode.